Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolute roller coaster ride of a 50-year evolution. We're talking about the most iconic duo in rock history, Daryl Hall and John Oates. We're going to chart their massive journey, right from their early days as acoustic soul musicians in Philly, all the way to becoming global pop superstars. Plus, we'll look at their brilliant digital reinvention, and finally, that shocking corporate reality that recently brought their incredible partnership to a screeching halt. It's honestly a classic, almost tragic story of art, commerce, and just how fragile a creative brotherhood can really be.
So let's rewind just a bit to a decade ago. Notice the absolute certainty in John Oates' words here. The year was 2014, and the duo was standing side by side on stage, finally accepting their long overdue induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They were celebrating this deep, unbreakable creative bond that had somehow weathered totally shifting musical trends and the notoriously brutal music industry for 4 straight decades. On stage, Hall asked the crowd, "Can we do this together? Nobody does this together." And Oates fired back with this exact quote. You know, at the time, it really felt like an unbreakable bond.
But fast forward exactly 10 years to May 2024, and wow, what a difference a decade makes. The whole musical world was completely stunned to learn that Hall and Oates were no longer sharing a stage. Instead, they were facing off in a courtroom. A really bitter legal dispute had erupted between them, culminating in an actual temporary restraining order. The music had essentially stopped, and it was entirely replaced by lawyers, corporate arbitration, and locked assets. Which brings us to the million-dollar question. How on earth did the most successful duo in music history end up with a restraining order against each other? I mean, how does a 50-year creative marriage just collapse over corporate paperwork? To really grasp this tragedy and the sheer weight of this split, we've got to go back to the beginning. We need to look at what they built, how they built it, and the distinct eras of their legendary career. Let's get into it. Now, if there's one thing you need to know about their music, it's that their evolution is an absolute masterclass in adaptability. Back in 1973, they were pioneering this incredible acoustic soul sound with albums like Abandoned Luncheonette. Then, boom, by 1980, they executed this flawless synth-pop pivot with the album Voices, literally defining the sound of the MTV generation. And then, as if that wasn't enough, in the 2000s and 2010s, they pulled off a massive internet-age reinvention with the groundbreaking web show Live from Daryl's House. They were never just survivors, they were the ultimate cultural shapeshifters.
Let's jump back to that very first era for a second. After their debut album kind of failed to make waves, Hall & Oates packed up and moved from Philly to New York City. They were set to record Abandoned Luncheonette with the legendary producer R.F. Martin at Atlantic Records. And this quote from Oates paints such a vivid picture of that time. Imagine being in your early 20s, suddenly finding yourself at the absolute epicenter of the music world, and literally bumping into musical titans like Aretha Franklin and Bob Dylan right in the hallways. They were just soaking up this incredibly fertile creative energy, and it completely forged their musical identity. And you know, that youthful, rebellious energy extended right down to their album covers. The story behind the Abandoned Luncheonette art is wild. They literally found an old, dumped diner just sitting in the woods of Pennsylvania. So what do? They sneak inside with a photographer to get that perfect interior shot, end up in this heated altercation with a very angry property owner, and literally have to narrowly escape. After all that, the photographer had to hand-color the black and white 35mm shots using a silkscreen process. It was raw, it was completely authentic, and it perfectly matched the acoustic soul they were putting out. Well, all of that raw talent and pure hustle paid off in a truly historic way. Just take a look at this number: 0. According to the Roots' drummer Questlove, who actually gave their Hall of Fame induction speech, 0 is the exact number of duos more popular than Hall & Oates in the rock era. Not the Everly Brothers, not Simon and Garfunkel. In terms of sheer unmatched pop dominance, Hall & Oates stand entirely alone at the very top of the mountain. No contest.
And hey, the data absolutely backs up that commercial dominance. To put it into perspective, if we just look at the official UK charts as a quick snapshot of their global reach, we are talking 84 weeks in the top 75 for singles, and a staggering 120 weeks for albums. They had 12 albums crack the top 40 over there. And keep in mind, this is just the UK. Back in the US, they racked up 6 #1 pop hits. During the early 1980s, they weren't just playing the game, they were the absolute kings of the pop charts.
Now, a massive driver of all that success was their 1981 smash hit, You Make My Dreams. The creation story of this song is actually super fascinating.
Daryl Hall wrote that iconic, bouncy opening riff on a keyboard he almost never used. In fact, he initially thought the famous "You Make My Dreams Come True" refrain was way too trite. But thankfully, he stuck with it. The track hit #5 on the pop charts, but even more importantly, it became a permanent fixture in pop culture. I mean, think about that massive dance sequence in the 2009 film 500 Days of Summer. The song is practically a shot of pure, unironic joy that has just completely outlasted its own era.
But it wasn't just those mega hits that defined them. While traditional pop radio was practically playing Maneater on a continuous loop, a deeply loyal tribe of fans was revering their incredible catalog of deep cuts. If you jump on platforms like Reddit today, you'll still see passionate fans debating the brilliance of tracks like Lady Rain, Had I Known You Better Then, and Las Vegas Turnaround, which, fun fact, was actually inspired by Sarah Allen, the exact same muse for Sara Smile. Their musicianship ran incredibly deep, way beyond what Top 40 radio could ever capture. And that brings us to a really major pivot in their story. As they rolled into the 2000s, Daryl Hall realized something. The traditional music industry had become totally fossilized. On one side, you had what he called the gatekeepers, network executives demanding predictable formulas, auto-tuned tracks, and reality TV singing contests. Hall completely rejected this. He wanted to build what he called the tribe, a true community focused on unrehearsed live music, the freedom of the early internet, and authentic connections between musicians, completely free from all that corporate interference. The ultimate result of that rebel vision was Live from Daryl's House. It was this brilliant, internet-born show where Hall invited diverse musical guests up to his home in upstate New York for completely unrehearsed live collaborations. Get this, he actually pitched it to traditional TV networks first, and they literally told him it was too smart for TV because it lacked a predictable ending. So he just said fine, bypassed them entirely, put it straight on the internet, and accidentally created a massive, authentic cultural phenomenon. Hall famously described the vibe of the show with this quote, "Every episode is a blind date. Because there were absolutely no rehearsals, pure magic could happen at any second." There's this one legendary episode with Smokey Robinson. Hall finished singing his own hit, Sara Smile, and then, without any warning whatsoever, he immediately launches into Smokey's classic, Ooh Baby Baby. You can actually see the sheer surprise and pure joy on Smokey's face. It was totally lightning in a bottle, proving that when you remove all the corporate editing and just let real musicians play, absolutely incredible things happen.
But here's the tough part. For all that artistic purity, the reality of maintaining a 50-year partnership is that it inevitably turns into a massive corporation. Just look at this stark contrast. The incredible magic of the brotherhood that created all this unforgettable music, well, it was legally bound to something called Oates Enterprises, a very cold corporate entity dealing with publishing shares, asset management, and ultimately high-stakes arbitration. And that stark reality brings us to the actual mechanics of the 2024 legal fracture. The whole dispute centered around John Oates attempting to sell his half of their joint business, Oates Enterprises, to the music publisher Primary Wave Music. Well, Daryl Hall responded by claiming that this sale completely violated their business agreement, which legally required mutual consent. This quickly escalated to Hall filing a lawsuit, securing a temporary restraining order, and effectively halting the sale dead in its tracks while the whole mess is untangled in closed-door arbitration. After 50 years of hitmaking, the music literally stopped over a breach of contract dispute. In the immediate fallout of that lawsuit, John Oates offered this incredibly sobering reflection. He said it was a miracle that it lasted that long. After 50 years, people grow apart. He pointed out that while he never had an issue discussing creative problems with Daryl, the business side of things was just fundamentally different. Both men have openly acknowledged the incredible body of work they created together, but Oates made it crystal clear. There are absolutely no plans for them to ever share a stage again. The ultimate creative brotherhood had finally reached its expiration date. Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative question. If a 50-year musical brotherhood, one that completely conquered the pop charts and seamlessly reinvented itself for the digital age, can't ultimately survive the cold, hard realities of business, can any creative partnership truly last without corporate protections eventually destroying the art? It's a tragic, yet endlessly fascinating reminder of the eternal struggle between passion and commerce. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep exploring, and I'll catch you on the next one.